Morning, sir. Welcome to Bharat News. It's a pleasure that you are here sharing your time and wisdom with us. Thank you so much, sir.
Well, thank you for having me.
Sir, talking about the H1 visa surcharge. Since October 21, 2025, any new H1B petition must include a $100,000 fee. Over 70% of H1B approvals go to Indians, and IT companies are recalibrating their hiring. President Trump says that he ensures highly skilled jobs go to Americans first. Sir, the question here is, do you believe this policy will help or hurt America's long-term competitiveness? And what does it mean for US-India talent exchange?
Well, I think what Trump has done on the H-1 visa fee is a terrible mistake. I think it will obviously make it more difficult to attract foreign talent to the United States. I think the research indicates very clearly that bringing in people with expertise doesn't take jobs away from Americans. It helps grow the economy and create more jobs. I think it's been the H-1B visa program has been a real plus for U.S.-India relations, and it's very distressing to think that this enormous and unjustifiable increase in the fee could hurt that. So I think Congress is very interested in this, and hopefully we'll be able to make a change. Maybe Prime Minister Modi and Trump can speak about it at some point, but reversing the policy as soon as possible, I think, is the best course for the U.S.
Definitely, sir. And sir, talking about the most hot topic, the tariff, and particularly talking about the US-India tariffs. The US has imposed tariff up to 50% on about $50 billion worth of Indian exports, affecting textiles, jams, and seafood. South Asia's growth forecast for 2026 has already been cut. PM Modi has quoted that open trade is the path to prosperity, not barriers. The question here is, how can the US and India avoid sliding into a trade confrontation that weakens both economies?
Well, I think it's very important to have the sides talking about this. I think the 25% part of that tariff imposed because of Indian purchases of Russian oil and gas was a mistake. Trump hasn't imposed any kinds of sanctions on Russia for selling the oil and gas, at least insufficient sanctions, and has not sanctioned China, which is a much larger purchaser of oil and gas. So I think what we need to do is deprive Russia of the revenues that it's gaining from the sale of oil and gas to finance the war in Ukraine. I think that can be done working together with India in a market where oil prices are coming down around the world to help transition away from being reliant on Russian supplies. I think the other 25% of the tariffs can be negotiated. I think India and the U.S. were in negotiation back in August when Trump arbitrarily said, I'm going to put the 25% rate in. The sooner we get that corrected, the better. I think overall, the Trump tariff policy is a huge mistake for the United States, and particularly the way it was applied to India. So this is another unforced error on the White House part. And once again, the sooner we get it corrected, the better.
Definitely, sir. So talking about the government shutdown, the October 2025 shutdown followed 750,000 workers with over 4,000 layoffs already announced, and payback is still uncertain. President Trump defended it as a necessary correction to Washington's waste. Sir, the question here is, do repeated shutdowns undermines America's credibility as a reliable partner abroad? And how should US leadership address this risk?
Well, I think the shutdown is evidence of the breakdown of the ability to have bipartisan negotiations in Congress. But I wouldn't read too much into it. We've had many shutdowns over the years. This is because of the inability to pass the budgets for many, in this case, all of the big agencies. But the agencies that matter most, the Pentagon, law enforcement, are all still operating. And people will get paid when it finally gets resolved. So this is, I think, less a signal internationally than it is domestically. Both parties are looking to pin the blame on the other and benefit from it politically. I'm not sure either one will. I think it probably harms trust in institution of governments all the way around. But internationally, I don't think it really should be seen as anything other than more partisan politics here in the U.S.
Okay, sir. Sir, talking about the Israel Gaza, the Gaza war is officially over, where the US brokered ceasefire, but the hostage remains are incomplete, air trucks are delayed, and crossings like Rafah remain bottlenecks. Sir, PM Netanyahu has said Israel will not compromise its security while Hamas demands full prisoner exchanges. The question here is, what must Washington do in the next 60 days to hold this ceasefire together and prevent a return to the conflict?
Well, I think everybody can justifiably celebrate the release of the Israeli hostages, including the commitment by Hamas to return the remains of those who have died. It ends the agony for the families and friends after almost exactly 2 years of being held captive. And that's something that we should all take comfort in. But the plan itself, while it's very aspirational and forward-looking, has a lot of difficult steps that have simply not been agreed to.
Yes,
And the step that we're in now, probably one of the most difficult steps of all, is
yes,
to demilitarize Hamas, to disarm them, to destroy the underground fort, this tunnel system that they built under Gaza, and to try and restore control to some kind of group more representative of the Gazan people. That's going nowhere at the moment. And the disarming point is particularly hard. President Trump said yesterday, well, if they don't disarm, we will disarm them. That's a hollow threat, a very hollow threat. So I don't want to draw definitive conclusions after just a few days, but certainly I would say the odds of a quick long-term solution here are very, very remote.
yes, sir. So now we will move to the Russia-Ukraine war. Ukraine drones have set Russian oil refineries ablaze in Crimea. Russian missile strike just knocked out major parts of Ukraine's power grid. President Trump quoted, if Russia refuses peace, we will arm Ukraine with tomahawks. President Zelensky said, Ukraine will not trade freedom for fuel or fear. The question here is, sir, how should the US balance supplying advanced weapons with the danger of direct escalation with Moscow?
Well, President Trump will meet with President Zelensky in Washington on Friday. I'm sure the subject of the tomahawks will come up. I think the U.S. and NATO have been deterred by Russia for 4.5 years now, going on 5 years, by the threat of a wider war, which was never a credible threat. And given the damage that Russia is doing to Ukraine's civilian infrastructure, I think targets that are militarily related in Russia are fair game for Ukraine. I hope Trump gives the tomahawks. There is a risk of escalation, but if the war simply continues as it is today, Russia is grinding away in a war of attrition against Ukraine at enormous human cost to both sides. And I think the tomahawks and a more strategic approach to dealing with the Russian aggression could bring the war to a more successful conclusion more quickly.
Definitely, sir. Sir, talking about the Red Sea, Houthis attacks since 2023 have halved Suez traffic and cut Egypt's canal revenue by 60%. A May 2025 ceasefire paused US bombing, but sporadic strikes on commercial ships continue. President Trump said only strength can protect shipping lanes, while analysts warn Houthis may even be launching from Sudan with SF backing. So the question here is, was the sustainable US strategy here? Strikes, escorts, or diplomacy to keep trade secure for countries like India and others?
Well, I think there's a role for diplomacy, but I think that has to come after the Houthis' capability to block the Suez Canal, Red Sea maritime passage is closed. This is not a matter this time of the necessarily just of the ring of fire strategy against Israel. This is a direct threat to international commerce, violates fundamental principles that have guided American foreign policy since before we became independent, since we were still a colony of Great Britain, which is freedom of the seas. So I think we and others who have an interest in this are fully justified in eliminating the Houthi capability to engage in this hostile activity. We know where the weapons come from. They come from Iran. and we should take steps to make sure that Iran can't deliver them anymore. So I wouldn't wait around if Iran voluntarily wants to suspend shipments of missiles and drones and other equipment to the Houthis. That'd be a good place to start. But in the meantime, we should say we believe in freedom of the seas. We're going to enforce it.
So talking about the next superpower, the emerging superpower, China. China now fields about 600 nuclear warheads, with its navy projected to outnumber the US in hulls within years. Jinping has declared the East is rising and the West is declining. How should America and its ally counter this narrative and military expansion without sparking open conflict, sir?
Well, the Chinese are building up their military capability across the full spectrum of weapons, both conventional systems, nuclear, cyber, gray zone
Yeah,
warfare, you name it. And I think the U.S. and its friends and allies around the world really need a better strategy to deal with it. Certainly at the nuclear level, this would change the world dramatically from Cold War days, which were basically a bipolar standoff between the Soviet Union and the U.S., into a tripolar standoff that makes the U.S. much more vulnerable. It means we need a significant increase in our nuclear capability, but it leaves everybody else vulnerable too, because now you have two nuclear powers in the form of Russia and China that clearly have hostile and aggressive intentions along their periphery and elsewhere. So this is going to mean, I think, increase in defense budgets kind of across the board. And I would hope, whether through the mechanism of the Asian Security Quad, Japan, India, Australia, and the U.S. or others, we can work more closely together to deal with this. It's not an emerging Chinese threat anymore. It's a real Chinese threat on the nuclear
yes.
side, but on many other aspects as well.
Sir, continuing the China topic, talking about the South China Sea now. Just this week, Chinese Coast Guard ships rammed a Philippine vessel near Thitu Island. The US condemned this act. Philippine President Marcos Jr. said, "We will not yield a single inch of our territory." The question is, under the US Philippines Defense Treaty, what concrete steps should Washington take to deter repeated incidents like this, sir?
Well, I think the U.S. should be taking a lot more steps with the Philippines. I think that this is an opportunity to restore some of the trust between the Philippines and the U.S. that used to exist and was very important, I think, to both of us. And I think all along the shores of the South China Sea, throughout Southeast Asia generally, countries can see what's happening here. They know what China's doing. The Philippines feels it directly. So does Vietnam. So do other countries. So this is a good example of the increasing Chinese threat along its Indo-Pacific periphery. We know what they're doing in the East China Sea, and incursions into Japan's maritime domain and airspace, threats against Taiwan, this kind of activity in the South China Sea. They've threatened Vietnam before. They've had clashes with India. We can see the pattern here. We shouldn't let it develop without trying to take steps that demonstrate our resolve to deter this kind of belligerent Chinese conduct.
Definitely, sir. Sir, talking about the US-India partnership again. India and the US are cooperating on semiconductors, defense co-production, and critical minerals, but progress is uneven. PM Modi in Washington said that India and the US are natural partners in building a secure, resilient future. So the question here is, what top three actions would you prioritize to turn this partnership into results that matter for both the nations?
Well, look, I think the U.S.-India relationship is the most important bilateral relationship in the 21st century. So there are a lot of
Yeah,
things that need to be done to improve it. But let's start with abolishing the H-1B visa fee. Let's get rid of the tariffs. Let's negotiate real reductions in previously existing tariffs, non-tariff barriers, and things like that, and really open our markets and our trade for, I think, real potential for increase. And third, and this covers a wide variety of activities, but I would look for significantly increased security cooperation. Now, I know there's a lot of history to overcome here with India's prior cooperation with Russia, but given that Russia is increasingly part of a Beijing-Moscow axis and the junior partner in that axis, to be sure, I think India needs to find new places to go for defense equipment and cooperation. There are certainly countries other than the U.S., but I think India and the US should be far more closely involved on these issues.
Definitely, sir. So the last question for today. The US faces simultaneous crises such as Ukraine, Gaza, Red Sea, China, while coping with shutdown policies and tight budgets. You have often quoted that weakness is provocative. Sir, the question here is what guiding doctrine should shape US foreign policy in 2026? And what is the one piece of advice you would give to the policymakers seeking peace without illusions?
Well, I think the strength of America's society at home and its economy depend on a strong American position in the world. The idea that we can turn our backs and trust that the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans are going to protect us was wrong 150 years ago. It's certainly wrong today. We need strong presence in the world. We need strong friends and allies, and I think by combining together, we can deter aggressor states. We can preserve international peace and security, as Ronald Reagan used to say, through peace through strength. And that particularly means in the Indo-Pacific region, there has to be a lot more American involvement and hopefully cooperation all across that vast area.
Definitely, sir. And sir, any piece of advice you would give to the policymakers, specifically the US policymakers, to whether to change their policy or something like that in 2026?
I think it's very critical that policymakers not be reactive, that they attempt to see what the future may bring and prepare for it, and to try and deter conduct we find unhelpful. Don't just wait and hope that things won't happen. That's a prescription for aggressors and people who don't have our best interest at heart to take advantage of us.
Thank you so much, sir. We'll really learned a lot from you today. Thank you for your time.
Well,
And
once
see you
again,
soon
thank
again
you for
on
having
Bharat
me.
News. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.